evening. How we doing? For those of you out there watching online, thank you for tuning in. I hope you get something out of tonight's message. We're kind of thin in here tonight. We've got people out ill. But we're still going to keep moving forward because it's important. It made me think about this today. What we're going to go over tonight, Genesis chapter 12. You know, God tells Abram to do something. And when he doesn't do it, there's consequences. Well, like I said, ever since about this time last year, I've faced consequences because I wasn't doing what God was telling me. And I still believe that, and I will always believe that. Not that he was punishing me, but because I didn't do what he said, I didn't get the true blessings that I could have. So, just know that there is a reason for everything that goes on. And as that lady challenged us down at in front of the Chinese restaurant a couple of weeks ago, she said, "How can you believe in a God that makes children sick?" Well, I don't think that's at all what happens. I think there's a lot of things that happen, not necessarily because of something the child has done, but because of what mankind has done prior. From the start of Adam and Eve. I mean, everything was perfect until Satan convinced them to do something against God's will. And we have, had to suffer the punishment ever since. And you'll see that again starting tonight. When we're talking about Abram, God said he's going to bless Abram. You'll see that in one of the verses here in a few minutes. But, there again, he doesn't do what God tells him, and he has to face the consequences. And we'll see that as we go through it. But let me open this up in a word of prayer, and we'll go back and look at some verses back in 11, all right? Heavenly Father, Lord God, again, we thank you for this place that you've given us. We thank you for the ability to spread this message out across the internet. Lord, I pray that you just encourage the people that get to watch it. Lord, I pray for those that aren't here with us tonight that you put your hands around them and get them back here as part of this family. Lord, we miss them when they're not here. Lord, again, we thank you for everything that's going on here. In Jesus' holy and precious name, amen. So in chapter 11, we talked about the Tower of Babel, and we talked about how people were going against what God said, and they were going to build a tower high enough so that they could watch God and they could be away from water if it ever came again, even though God promised that never would happen, and that they wouldn't have to disperse and go around, away from where they were. They wanted to gather together, and he wanted them to disperse. And when they decided not to do that, he caused the division in the languages. Therefore, they split off into different tribes. That's why they went to different places. And that's how we get the division of languages, and how it sounds like some people are babbling. That's where that word came from, because they couldn't understand each other. Just like me standing here, sitting here talking to you now. If I start saying, porcupine, duckbill, platypus, what you understand some of the words, but you may not understand what I'm trying to say, right? It makes me think of World War II code talkers. And if you don't know what that is, there's a great movie about it. But they enlisted Native Americans. I think it was Arapaho. I believe that's what it was. Navajo. Thank you. I knew it was one of those. But they would interpret items and commands in their language, which would confuse anyone that even spoke the language if they hadn't been trained in what those things actually meant. So, a turtle in a pond could be amphibious units, right, that are fixing to attack or whatever. I don't know. Watch the movie. It's really good. But, even in chapter 11, it did some of and this person is the father of this person. So we're going down from Noah through Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and it talks about the descendants of Shem, and those are the ones that will be important because those are where the Hebrews come from. And the word Eber is in there, and that's where we get the word Hebrew from. But specifically, then it starts talking at the end of 11 about Terah's descendants, which included Abraham, Nahat, and Haran. And then it said Haran fathered Lot. Now, tonight's lesson in chapter 12 is about Abram and Lot, his cousin, and also Abram's wife, who is also in the same family. So we'll see all that as it goes through here. But it won't be a very long session tonight, but I do want to go through all of chapter 12 because it's important that we understand one thing. When God tells you to do something, don't try to figure out an easier way to do it. Just do what he says, okay? So let's look at chapter 12, verse 1. It says, "Now the Lord said to Abram," stop right there. So God is physically talking to Abram. Now this is the same person that will become Abraham later on, but right now his name is Abram. It's Terah's son Abram. But he says to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you." There are 3 specific things he just told him to do. Leave where you are, leave your family, and trust where I send you. Okay? It's a real simple thing. You know, he doesn't say take anyone with you. He doesn't say anything. He just says go. Right? So don't pack up the family. Don't load up the camels. Just go. That's important. Verse 2. "And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing." So here it is. God is telling Abram, pack up and go, and I will do something great for you once you do it. Simple enough, right? And you would think that the rest of us throughout all of history would learn once God has said to do something, we would do it. And like I keep saying, you know, I consider Rockwood now my Nineveh, my place where I was supposed to go and teach the word. And because I didn't for so long, I wasn't doing what God was telling me. And this story really sends that home for me. So verse 3, watch what it says here. This is God speaking, "I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors," or curses, I think it may say in some versions. Yeah, it dishonors or curses you, I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now, Abram doesn't know what this means yet. He just knows that God's speaking to him. Pack up and go, leave your home, leave your family, go where I tell you to. Now, he hasn't really shown He hasn't shown Abram where he's going yet, okay? He just says, pack up and go, and I'll lead you where I want you to be, okay? Now, we have watched already that the people have been going away from God. That's why in Babel, or Babel, as some people say, you know, they decided to go against God and build the towers. They've run amok. They've changed the way they believe and things like that. So here's Abram now. He's still part of this same family, the descendants of Noah, right? So there's not that great of a division between them. Watch chapter 12, verse 4. So Abram went. So he acknowledged God told him to do something, and he did it, right? And if it ended right there, that would be perfect. But it doesn't end there. "And Abram went, as the Lord told him, and Lot went with him." Let's back up a little bit. If I go over here and I look at verse 27, it says that the generations of Terah fathered Abraham, Noah, and Haran fathered Lot. Remember I said that the Bible doesn't call out a name unless it's important for the next story. So Lot is Abram's nephew. You agree? Because Haran is Abram's brother. Right? We good there? Then also says down here a little bit, and Abram and Nahor, his brother, took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai. That comes into play a little bit later as well. But here's the interesting thing about Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarah was barren, and she had no child. That becomes important here in a minute. So Abram and Sarai and Lot are now on the move, right? So Abram, as the Lord told him, and Lot with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. So here I am, I'm 57. I have my kids and grandkids, and we have other people here that are reaching that age closer to 75, but they have kids and grandkids and great-grandkids as well. But here's Abram with no children. He has his nephew with him and his wife, and away they go, right? All right, so we're all good. We're all good with that, right? Now, and Abram took Sarai his wife and Lot his brother's son and all their possessions that they had gathered and the people they had required in Haran. We don't see any of that yet, but we know that he had animals, he had possessions, he had servants, he had all kinds of stuff. Okay, it'll come back into play here in a minute. But watch this. And the people that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to go to the land of Canaan. Now, we've heard that word before. What is the land of Canaan? No, not of Cain. Not of Cain. The descendants of Ham's son, Canaan. Right? Because Noah cursed Canaan, the son of his youngest son, Ham. He said all the descendants of Canaan will be bad. So where's God sending Abram, who is now second cousin to Canaan? Sending him into Canaan, where the descendants of the Canaanites are, right? So verse 5 also says that when they came out, and when they came to the land of Canaan, verse 6, Abram passed through the land to the place at Shechem, to the oak of Morah. At the time, the Canaanites were in the land. So the Canaanites are there. Now that comes into play again later on when Moses comes out of Egypt into Canaan. Okay? So they're there. They exist. Did Abram stop? No. He went right on through Canaan, through Shechem. Right? Where we don't know, is that where God sent him? We don't know yet. We just know that God led him through the land of Canaan. God has said, I'm going to bless all of your descendants and the nation that will be descended of you. Yet he went right on through Canaan. Verse 7. Verse 7 then says, Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, To your offspring I will give this land. So now has he not only spoken to Abram, but now he's sitting face to face with him. Right? Of course, Abram is seeing the Spirit of God. He's not actually seeing the presence of God, because it will say later on that no one can see the presence of God. Right? All right. So it says, to the offspring, to your offspring, Abram, you're 75 years old, you don't have any children yet, but to the ones that you will have when I'm ready for you to have them, I will give this land. This land that belongs to a distant relative of yours that is not blessed by me, you're going to take it away from them. Okay? Once again, you got to make all the pieces of the puzzle fit, right? The end of verse 7 then says this, So he, this is Abram, built there an altar to the Lord who appeared to him. So here's the second time an altar has been built to God. The first one, when the ark settled and Noah got off, he built an altar to the Lord. Right? So here's another one where Abram has now been told by God to go somewhere. He went, and then God presented himself to him and said, This will be your land. So he made another altar. But he's still not done. Verse 8. From there he moved to the hill country. Why would you move? If this is where your descendants will have their land because God said so, why would you leave there? We don't know. It doesn't say. But look what it says. It says, from there he moved to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. Now, some people call that I or A, but it's the way I've heard it pronounced is Ai, just like it's written there. On the west of the Ai is on the east. And there, look, he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. So now he knows, I'm moving, but I still want to follow what God has said. So I've built an altar there at Shechem. Now I'm going east of Bethel up toward Ai, and I'm going to build another one there. He pitched his tent there, had all of his people and all of his animals and everything with him, right? And he built another altar. Okay. Verse 9. And Abram journeyed on, still going to the Negeb. Now, if you study any of the maps, usually in the end of a good study Bible, it'll show you where these places are. He's still moving to the east from where they had come from, right? Where the ark settled on, I want to say Mount Ararat, but I don't think that's right. Anyway, so now they're moving east, basically through Turkey. If you look at a map today, that's where they are. So they're moving east, okay? But watch what it says now in 10. Now there was a famine in the land. We don't know why, but you know what a famine means, right? That means there's no food, right? Well, Moses, I do it again. Abram is just moving through, but it says there's a great famine in the land. So Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, or to live out his life there, for the famine was severe in the land. Did God tell him to go to Egypt? What did God tell him to do? Pack up, go, and I will show you where to go. Right? And he built an altar, and God came down and talked to him. Walked with him probably. We don't know. It doesn't say that, but that's a common thing to think of in the Old Testament, right? And then there's a famine in the land. There is a circumstance that Abram doesn't like. Have you ever had a circumstance in your life that you didn't like? Oh yeah. Well, did you do something that you knew you shouldn't do, or did you wind up doing something that could be considered a bad choice in your life? I know I did. I absolutely know I did. Well, here's Abram packing everything up and moving to Egypt. God didn't tell him to go to Egypt, right? Watch carefully what happens here. Verse 11. So 10, Egypt to sojourn there, famine was great. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarah his wife, I know that you are a woman that is beautiful in appearance. That's a way to butter up a wife, isn't it? Hey, honey, you're awful beautiful. You know that? You're really pretty. Yeah. Look what he says in 12. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, well, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, and they will let you live, because the Egyptians will want her for themselves. And he doesn't want to have to fight for her. Okay, why are they going anyway? We still don't know, right? Except for the famine, the circumstance in their life. But look what he says. So, that's a Fred word, because the first word is say. Say you are my sister, which really is not that far off. You got to remember, everybody's related. They're only 3 generations away from Noah, right? So say you are my sister, and it may go well with me because of you, that my life may be spared for your sake. In other words, I know you're my wife, and we've been promised kids by God, my words here, but I'm afraid for my life, so why don't you tell them that you're just my sister instead of my wife? That way they'll leave me alone, and they may even give me a job. We don't know, But don't worry about it, honey. You just do whatever they say, and everything will be fine. Something stuck on my lip there. Sorry. 14. When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. So he called it right. And when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. Stop right there. Honey, I know you're beautiful and all of that's great, but why don't you just tell them you're my sister so that they won't kill me? So not only did they not kill him, but they took her to become a concubine of the Pharaoh. So there's a process they have to go through for that. I don't know all of the details of it. We're not going to spend time in the gore of all that stuff. But they have taken Sarai away from Abram. Okay, he's 75. She's got to be up there in age too. We don't know how old she is right here yet. But know that she's probably not a spring chicken. And he's given her to them. And they take her to the Pharaoh's castle. Uh-oh. Does that sound like something God would have wanted to have happen? We wouldn't have it. Remember, he said, I will bless anyone who blesses you, and I will curse anyone who curses you, right? Look at the next verse, 16. And for her sake, he dealt well with Abram. In other words, the Pharaoh did okay by Abram because Abram gave them his sister. How did they do that? He had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. All the other stuff he got to keep, and the Pharaoh said, well, here's more of it. I'm taking your sister, and here's a couple of sheep for her trouble. That's just a Fred thought there, but you get the idea. Abram is giving his wife to the Pharaoh, saying it's his sister, so that the Pharaoh would bless him. But that's not what's happening. The Pharaoh gives him all this stuff, right? Watching the next verse. That's the end of 16, 17. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh, because that's not what God had told Abram to do. And Pharaoh is taking advantage of the situation because he took Abram's wife, Sarai. But the Lord affected Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. Now, for those of you that saw this past Sunday morning service, we talked about the word house, and we said that house in the Old Testament meant family. So here is God afflicting the family of Pharaoh because he took Abram's wife Sarai. See how those two things play together? When we talk about the house of David, we talk about the houses not just being a physical building, but all of the family. Because watch here what happens in 18. And in 18 it says, so Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? So somewhere right in there, someone got the idea and asked Abram, hey, who is this girl? Oh, that's my wife. What? So the word gets back to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh starts to figure it out. All of this bad stuff is happening to me since I brought this dame in with me, right? What? So now he goes back to Abram and says, what have you done to me? It wasn't Abram. It was the wrath of God. It says so right there. Because Pharaoh had taken Sarai, Abram's wife. So the Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this you've done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? 19. And suddenly I realized this is coming up quicker than I thought. Anyway, so 19 says, why did you say she is my sister so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go. 20. And Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him and sent them away with his wife and all that he had. Now notice that throughout that story, it talked about Abram and Sarai and Pharaoh. Lot's not mentioned except that Lot was with him. What is the disposition of Lot at this moment? We don't know. But in the very next chapter, we'll find out what happens to Lot. And it's pretty important. But I want to spend some time and make you think about what we just read. So those of us that are advancing in age, and yes, Tim, I see your message. I'll get back to you in a little bit. What would you think about going into a new place and being afraid for your life? Would you give up your wife? And you don't have to answer that. That's not what I mean. But I want you to think about these kind of things. How would you deal with going into a hostile place with a beautiful bride? Would you ever consider giving up that beautiful bride so that you could be okay yourself? Knowing that God has already promised your descendants will be blessed. I can't get over this. Abram decided on his own to do something that is not in the will of God because he's afraid. Okay, why did he leave Ai? Because there was a famine. That's a circumstance. It wasn't a commandment to go to Egypt. There were probably other places to go. But yet he decided he would take himself, his wife, Lot, and all of their servants and all of their animals and go to Egypt. Why? Why would you not listen to what God has told you? God has said, do this and you will be blessed. Well, he didn't do this, and now he can't be blessed because God never changes his mind, ever. He never goes, oh, well, that was a mistake. You know, he was saddened when Adam and Eve, and when all the people of the world failed him and he had to flood the earth. He was saddened, right? He was sorry that he had made man. That's what it said. We discussed that. But he never said, I've changed my mind, ever. Right? So Abram took it upon himself to think that he's above God because he wanted to do what he wanted. Okay? Now, think back in your life to every circumstance you've had where you did what you wanted to, regardless of what everybody else told you. It never ended up good. Ever. Cost me money. Cost me, more than I want to discuss in public. Because I'm ashamed of what I've done. I am ashamed of what I've done because God told me, this is how you will live. Live this way and you will be okay. And I chose to not live that way, and now I'm suffering the consequences of it. And I don't think there's a person out there that can tell me they have never faced this situation. If so, then you're lying to yourself. You have faced this, and you have failed. It is part of who we are to think we are better or we know more than God. And that's what Abram has done. And people lose sight of that. God sat with Abram and said, I'm going to bless your descendants, which means he's going to have kids. He's 75 and doesn't have any yet. And his wife has got to be about that age too. She's barren. It said she's barren. But yet God said, and if God says, it means it. He means it. He doesn't, like I say, he doesn't change his mind. There is no record of God ever changing his mind, period. You want to argue with that with me? We can do it offline. But listen, he knows. Why? He's omnipresent, means he's everywhere. He's omniscient, which means he knows everything. And he's omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, all-powerful. So he's everywhere, every time, and knows every circumstance. He can never learn anything new because he already knows everything. So he knew already that Abram would do this. And yet he still said, and I will bless your descendants. And yet Abram goes and does this. So you would think that's the end of Abram. But no! God is patient, and God had a purpose, and we can now look back and go, wow, that's what he meant when he told me, go here. Or that's why I didn't spend that time in jail. Or that's that time that I didn't get run over when I should have been dead. Because he said, go and do this. Did you ever think about Abram, the story of Abram, that way before? It's very easy to skip over these words and just read it going, well, I've read the Bible. Yeah, but did you understand it? No. I can't tell you how many times I've read through this. And every time I read it, I try to look at it from a different perspective. Now, don't try to look at it from the perspective of a camel. It's kind of a fisheye look kind of thing. But if you try to look at it from Sarai's perspective, the man that she trusted gave her up to save his own life. Would you, if your spouse gave you up like that, would you be willing to go back with them at the end? Probably not, right? How about Lot? How about this nephew of his? My uncle gave up his wife, but we're supposed to have the blessings of God. I don't understand. This is confusing me. How many, again, don't answer, but think. How many of your relatives are confused about God because of the way you've acted in your past? How many neighbors? How many people who you don't know have now reacted because of something you've said or done, either living for God or not living for God? I can tell you, I'm sorrowful for all the people that I misled years ago because my actions did not meet up with what God had commanded me to do. But now he's given me the opportunity. I'm back doing what he told me to do when I was a child. And I didn't understand it. Now I understand. I'm still not 100% perfect. I never will be, but I'm trying. Abram hadn't got to that point yet. Abram now has given up his wife. God has now punished Pharaoh. And Pharaoh goes, what did you do to me? Right? What? Why didn't you tell me it was your wife? Yeah, I would have probably killed you and took her anyway. We have to think that, right? Oh, okay. So to bring it home to us in the biker community, this would be like a club member, giving up his woman to somebody else to make a better status for himself, to make a progression in the club. These are things I hear about. I don't understand them, but this is for all time. The Bible is based on specific people pointed out in the Old Testament. I said it always points to the next story. So here's Abram, Sarai, and Lot. Abram gives up Sarai. Lot hasn't done anything yet, but yet there's stories that are going to come about those three people. So we know there's more to it, right? That's where we get the next chapter. Because in chapter 13, Lot and Abram kind of go separate ways. You need to know why. And you need to understand what follows. But for now, Abram, Sarai, Lot, and all of their traveling buddies went through the land of Canaan. And God said, and this will become your descendants' land. Canaanites will still be there when they go back many, many years later. Okay? Questions? All good? All right. If any of you out there online have questions, feel free to send them to me. Send me a message through Facebook or even on the video here for YouTube. Just know that everybody can see if it's on YouTube. All right? Then I'll go ahead and we'll close this up for tonight. And we'll do our personal prayer request. And we'll see you guys Sunday morning, 10 o'clock. Sunday afternoon at 4 for Recovery Beginnings. And then again next Wednesday at 6. All right? See y'all.